At the moment I'm mainly painting, but my career has included filmmaking and music. Not knowing, constantly not knowing, I think it's someplace I'd always like to stay. I'm very interested in science, I've become very interested in science of late, and I think that thing of in the process, constantly in the process. So when you get people who understand that sort of oscillation, I guess, between visual pictures or how visual pictures might relate to sound, then it's nice when you get a curator who understands it. And actually, this is a very, very good time to be a painter. It's a very good time to be a female painter, a figurative painter. One thing, you know, a lot of female artists and I share is we don't really identify as female. Not in terms of the work, we just do the work. And we're saying it's kind of quite a nice sort of swaggering kind of feeling. You know, when you were at art school, you're all in your overalls and you're all doing sort of fairly physical work. It doesn't really feel like you're working in a different way. It's like not really the concerns, societal thinking about male-female roles just doesn't apply. Pushing something out, but also being kind of sensible about the idea that you are part of, you know, like anything you think artists are very avant-garde, they're of course influenced by fashion, aren't they? You know, we look back and when the documentary's made, they'll always find the appropriate music and it's like, oh God, yeah, they were really of their time, you know. A ton of artists making it, you know, kind of out of their studios and incommunicado and, you know, really pushing, painting particularly at the moment. I think it's a fantastic time to be a painter. In terms of what I sit down to make paintings about, it has to be, you know, there's this odd supernatural thing that feels slightly supernatural. You see something, you just want to kind of get right inside it, and I can't really explain what that is. Or it might be something suggestible, or of late, you know, it's kind of, I'm figuring out ways to make some work about other dimensions, actually, quite psychedelic. So I think the fabulous thing about painting is as long as you can get to see the surface of it, it does do something else to you. It can do so many things at once. There is something about this fixing of time, synthesis of time and space as well, and imaging, you know, and for me it becomes even weirder, you know, it becomes this thing about the stuff of it in terms of the, you know, physical world. You know, it's all stuff. This is just, we just happen to have a biosphere around ours. You know, this ochre, this, you know, this is all space dust. We're space dust, you know, animated chunks of space dust. And also the human condition through lenses. You know, how people are with lenses, this weird thing. How they've been captured and fixed. What that might reveal. Possibly that was also to do with working with film, little film segments played over 300 times. You know, 9 seconds of film played over, or that's huge. I mean, 2 seconds of film played hundreds and hundreds, and starts to play with you, and you start to see actors interior lives and exterior lives, and that's very interesting. And flickering things in an eye. Love Victorian photography. And of course they just do these strange hooded, darkened eyes and these peculiar white ovals. These are, you know, things that have never really weirdly left me. I mean, a lot of my work, I'm just looking at all this kind of slightly Victorian feel to them. Can't explain that. When I started doing the miniatures, I was completely isolated. I mean, completely isolated. And it was just something that was like a thing I could cling on to. So these are very recent. So these are sort of lockdown paintings. So then these kind of funny little psychedelic manifestations of the divine, which is maths, these kind of celestial creatures, I was calling them. A bit like medieval saints as well, angels. You know, this so many cultures have this idea of entities in other, you know, kind of amongst us but invisible to us. You know, when you're 9 and you paint ponies because you love ponies, well, this is my fan art. This is a picture of Neil Armstrong, who I was convinced was Louis Armstrong when the actual space walk was happening, because I was a big fan of Louis Armstrong, and I couldn't believe he'd just gone to the moon. And it turns out it was Neil, but Neil Armstrong, you know, kind of engineer in space, and they were very likely to die. I don't know, these extraordinary people, how they actually said something so profound about the planet and showed the planet back to us. And also the arc of my mother's life. My mother died quite recently, and one of my first really political memories is her grabbing me and pointing at the moon and going, "There are men up there, they've just landed." And a picture that a friend of mine has, this gorgeous child who he has allowed me to paint for Jean. So you see this biosphere and this little child listening to the sound of the planets. You were talking about sound in a painting, but like the moving through the biosphere to space and the planets. And you know, that thing that children do, they sometimes kind of can access things we forget. So, and then here's a painting I did of a friend on Zoom, like we all did. We all had a stab at that. But it had also these fabulous electronic artifacts, because of course everyone was Zooming on a Friday night or whatever. And rather lovely, of course, attractive colours. The non-absorbent surface. And also I quite often paint in enamel. And I like this kind of glassy effect. It sort of sits on the surface and slowly bleeds into each other. And I'm painting bigger again. I'm starting to expand in scale. So I made a movie down at Prospect Cottage with his boyfriend, gave us permission. And it was a transsexual woman, very witchy. And Faust, we all went down and we played trumpet and we wandered around the garden. I shot it all on Super 8. And the reason I went and bought a Braun Nitzer was because of Derek Jarman. It's as close as you can get to seeing the interior of someone's skull. I mean, we are all affected by the cinema, whether we like it or not, particularly 24 frames a second. People would come in, shot on digital, and they'd want us to recreate a hand-cranked fade or lens flare. You know, there's something about cinema, this kind of flickering thing in the dark, so like a cave, so like these things burning as we watch the paintings. And Super 8 has this ephemeral, gorgeous colour and difficulty to process, very difficult to film. You know, I've tele-cined off walls and stuff, and I quite like that kind of wonky feeling. And it's just got all that kind of fragility about it that makes it feel like a memory, and it's precious, and if we blink it'll vanish. And you know, it's on so many levels, you know, has that feeling of you're handling something very precious, and just the way it transmits colour, which is so weird, because it's, you know, you think the rush now is for sort of the perfect colour reproduction. Actually, this incredible bias. What is that speaking to? Is it just people of a certain age? I don't think it is. I think, you know, people who see, you can buy a Super 8 app for your phone. It just still has that romantic look. It also has a very human centre of attention, because the lenses on those things tended to be very good, and glass. And so you have that lovely kind of feeling of like the eye of, you know, it's like the eye of the beholder. It's not kind of just gathering. It's kind of like behaving more like a human eye. It's kind of passing over something. The day we went down was the coldest day on, it was beyond. So this gal gets her kit off, and so Faust are there and these witches, and everyone's doing this kind of spell for Rudolf Sosner. He's this kind of guy from Faust who died. And she walks through his garden, sits in this chair, and Geneviève is pouring water. The sun comes out, and there's this kind of ray of light just kind of comes down on this beautiful naked body. You know, it's a... Yes, absolutely, of course. You know, what we don't know much, but we're learning slowly. But you know, this thing of immortality, this thing of gardening, this thing of making a beautiful space, this thing of, you know, doing what you can to husband the world, the green, you know, and the biosphere. This is, you know, after all said and done, you know, actually where I'd like to end up. You know, this is sort of what I'd like to end up doing, you know, trying to sort of not be destructive, be the opposite for a change. About starting to make things a bit more attached to nature, or kind of something about. Well, I'm not quite sure. I'm just going to paint them and see what happens. So very exciting time, and yeah, it's going to be a very good time to make a lot of strange, large, new work. And you know, I'm very, very lucky with the attention, you know, and the people's kindness and critiques. Yeah, it's lovely.